Ishvari's next question says, what do you think about attending normal yoga or meditation classes once Kundalini has awakened? Yeah, this is a great question. So most quote unquote normal yoga classes, the teacher will say, listen to your own body, take rest when you need to, modify the poses as you need, and really, really lean into that. You have the original source of yoga within you, which is awakened Kundalini. So that should take precedence over the teacher in the room. If your body says, don't do this pose, or your body says, just sit in child's pose for the next half an hour, or just lay in shavasana for the next little bit, just do that. Follow your body. No shame, right? No shame. Even if there's a bunch of people around you, you're doing real yoga, listening to your own body. That's for gentle yoga, gentle stretching, gentle movements. When it comes to something like pranayama, as taught in a yoga class, breathing techniques, if you ask me, just don't engage in them. Pranayama is very powerful and it's meant for very specific things. Most yoga teachers, I am one, I've gone through a yoga teacher training for 200 hours. The training is just far too basic. The thing that they say is like, oh, if you do this breathing technique, there are benefits for your well-being. It calms the mind. It gives you energy. Like they have no idea what these breathing techniques are actually doing. And there's somebody at the class teaching 20 people these different breathing techniques. Now, do all 20 people need this one particular breathing technique at the same moment? Of course not. We've got somebody who's, a 16-year-old. We've got somebody who's 80. We've got somebody that's depressed. We've got somebody that's going through Kundalini awakening. We've got somebody that just did a psychedelic trip the day before. We have somebody that's high on weed. How can they all need the same breathing technique? They cannot. And it's irresponsible for somebody to teach something that they don't really understand. So don't engage in any sort of breathing techniques at a yoga class. Once again, you have the original source of yoga within you, which is awakened Kundalini. If you need a particular pranayama, a particular breathing pattern, it will happen to you spontaneously. You just start breathing in those ways. It just happens when you need it. And that's where these breathing techniques originally came from. People observed people with awakened Kundalini and they said, oh, this person has awakened Kundalini and they're breathing in this certain way. Let's document that and let's try and copy them. And then they documented it. And then other people found those documents and started copying them, not having a clue what it's doing. So that's one thing to keep in mind, especially Kundalini yoga, which is very powerful, but it's taught irresponsibly by people who don't even have awakened Kundalini most of the time. You don't have to have awakened Kundalini to become a Kundalini yoga teacher. You just need to do 200 hours of training. And I've seen this happen where people have powerful awakenings in the class. They go to the teacher and they say, hey, this happened to me. Can you help me? I'm struggling now. And the teacher's like, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of this before. It's really, really, it's not a good situation. So those are my thoughts on attending normal yoga classes. Listen to your body, gentle yoga, gentle movement. Yin yoga is great. Yoga nidra is great. Some gentle sun salutations. Fantastic. Fantastic. Also, keep in mind that it's important to note the scope of our teacher. You can ask them, what have you been through on your path? Just ask them point blank. Do you know about Kundalini? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? See what they say. Tune in, feel for yourself whether you should spend more time with them or not. So for me, I did a yoga teacher training. I asked the teacher, I said, do you have any experience with Kundalini? She said, no. I said, okay. I turned inwards and the Shakti within me said, no, you can still take the training with this person. It's okay. But I knew not to approach her with questions about my Kundalini. I knew because I knew she didn't have the answers for me. So I didn't expect her to, right? So that's one thing that we can do. Now, when it comes to meditation classes, once Kundalini has awakened, meditation, once again, more and more people are becoming meditation teachers with very, very little experience, and all sorts of really trippy, difficult things can arise, as we know, Kundalini awakening, for example, not to mention all sorts of things. Really, really intense stuff can happen. As long as, once again, you know that the teacher is able to support you or not. And so you don't go in completely carelessly. You take responsibility for yourself and you don't put your well-being in the hands of another. If the meditations are super intense, like today we're going to do a third eye meditation, don't do that. My approach to meditation is just to allow and observe. The Kundalini is awakened within you. It's going to lead you into meditation. It's going to show you how to meditate. And sometimes those meditations are quiet. Sometimes they're very intense. Sometimes there's energy moving. There's all sorts of things happening. But if we come in with our ego, or we trust the ego of another person who says, today we're going to do this type of meditation or that type of meditation, we are putting the awakened Kundalini's intelligence as secondary. We're putting it aside and we're saying, no, no, I'm going to listen to this person who has like done like a 50-hour training. I'm going to listen to them. It's disrespectful to the intelligence within your own body. So keep that in mind as well. These places are great. It's good that, you know, the culture is shifting and people are more open to this stuff. But the next culture shift is going to be people becoming aware of the potential challenges that can arise as a result of exploring these things more intensely. And maybe some of us are called to address this challenge by becoming our own yoga teachers, our own meditation teachers and whatnot with Awakened Kundalini, so we can support those that are going through some challenges. So those are just some of my ideas coming to me. I know it was a bit of a long response. I got lots to say about all this kind of stuff. Can get me a little fired up. But as long as we use our discernment, we should be okay. Should be okay. Hope that helps. Ishvari, great questions. Carissa adds here, I worry about having to suppress kriyas in that setting. Yeah, so kriyas, the spontaneous movements that may come up, sometimes it's vocalization, spontaneous vocalizations, they may come up. If you ask me, any meditation teacher, any yoga teacher who's really, you know, knows what they're doing, they shouldn't have a problem with spontaneous movements and kriyas. It takes 10 minutes to learn about this. It takes 10 minutes to understand that it's a valid, real experience. There's videos of people experiencing it on YouTube. Even within the psychology world, they understand that spontaneous movements happen when people are having trauma releases. It shouldn't be that far out. It should be quite well accepted. However, of course, I understand that, you know, they try to establish an environment of peace and quietude in some of these meditation and yoga studios. And so if somebody comes in and is having a profound awakening and they're flailing all over the place, kind of kills the vibe. It's not good for business. But of course, you know, are we in the business of healing people or are we in the business of making money? It's two different things. So what you can do is you can try and inform the teacher beforehand, say, hey, I'm going through this thing. You know, I'll sit in the corner. Just let me do my thing. They may say, hey, you know what? I can't handle that. I don't want to, you know, you're going to scare my students away. They may say, okay. And then you say, all right, you know what? Not for me. Then you go find somewhere else or you do it by yourself. But suppressing kriyas, I wouldn't put myself in a situation where kriyas were coming up and I was suppressing them. Find somewhere where you don't have to suppress. That's my take on it. Because they just come out in more intense ways at another point anyway. So by going to a sort of yoga class or a meditation class and then suppressing, we're doing a disservice. It's one thing to suppress at, you know, a family dinner or something. It's one thing to suppress where, you're like at the dentist or something. That's different. But if you're in a spiritual context, I think, you know, try and find somewhere where you can fully just let it rip. Easier said than done, of course, but the culture is shifting. And like I said, we're all part of that. And I know, Carissa, you're also a yoga teacher. So it's great that you have this experience. So when, you know, your students begin to go through these things, you know, you're there present with them and can offer them some guidance. It would have been amazing if some of my yoga teachers knew what the hell I was going through. That would have been nice.